My girl never made it home from her shift. I'm calling to report her missing. I just realized she's gone. Panic is setting in everywhere. 2 years have slipped by since Christina Morris evaporated into thin air at that Plano garage. Security footage caught her final stroll. That was the last time anyone spotted her. Plano detectives are convinced it was a snatch and kill. They've pinned the abduction at the legacy shops on one specific suspect. 42 months of desperate searching for 23-year-old Christina Morris reached a grim conclusion in an anafield near Highway 75. Insiders tipped off the local news. Those skeletal remains unearthed yesterday belonged to the missing girl, 23-year-old Christina Morris. At 3:50 in the morning, Enrique Orochi pings Hunter Foster's cell. 3 minutes fly by, followed by a pair of cryptic texts. Moments later, the lens captures Enrique and 23-year-old Christina Morris strolling toward a concrete parking structure in Plano. 3 minutes of silence. Suddenly, his vehicle exits alone. Her ride remains frozen in its stall. That was her final breath of life. It's August, 2014, right in the heart of Labor Day weekend. She'd cruised in from Fort Worth for a night at the legacy shops with old classmates, though a spat with her man soured the mood earlier. She was visibly shaken but keeping her cool. She'd only sipped on a couple of drinks that evening. The goal was straightforward: get home safe. Yet, at 2:12 a.m., she messages her boyfriend begging for a ride. Her keys had vanished. Silence on his end. By 4 a.m., she decides to slip out of her friend's place. Enrique Orochi shadows her every step. 10 minutes later, a pal checks in. Christina mentions they're just steps from her vehicle. She vows to send a text once she's inside. It never arrives. Video shows her moving alongside Enrique of her own free will. No struggle, no coercion. Then, they slip into a blind spot. The next frame shows only his car peeling out of the lot. Their digital footprints remain tethered to the same signal towers for over 60 minutes following that exit. At 4:56 a.m., her signal blinks out for good. He stays on the move while she fails to clock in for her shift. Calls go straight to voicemail. Her car sits bolted shut, devoid of her purse or phone. The scene looks undisturbed, lacking any obvious red flags of a fight. That eerie stillness is exactly what's so terrifying. Enrique plays the amnesia card for the cops. He claims a cocktail of 10 shots, 6 beers, Adderall, and weed wiped his memory. His initial story was that they parted ways way before they ever hit the garage entrance. Security footage calls his bluff, forcing a pivot. Now, he's theorizing their cars were just conveniently parked side by side. That was his excuse for walking together. But his skin told a different story, covered in fresh welts and abrasions. Tattered knuckles and a suspicious bite mark marred his hands. He shrugged it off as mechanical work on his ride. He flipped the script again, blaming a brawl. Then, before his shift, he made a beeline for the local car wash. The lens spots him just looming over his trunk, lost in thought, before he begins a frantic scrubbing session. This wasn't some casual spray down. He scoured every inch with surgical precision, seemingly desperate to erase any trace of what happened. Forensics eventually flagged Christina's DNA in that trunk too much, and in too many places to be some unlucky coincidence. It wasn't a fluke, yet her remains were still missing. He faced kidnapping charges but maintained his innocence in court. His defense? Either the evidence was a plant or some freak lab mix-up. That was his story anyway. 4 years into the mystery, a grisly discovery was made in the backwoods near Anna, Texas. The bones were matched to Christina Morris, though time had eroded the evidence of how she actually died. He's rotting in a cell for life now, still refusing to utter a word about those 3 missing minutes in the shadows. To truly untangle this web of secrets, we've got to revisit the very first chapter. We're in North Texas today, where urban sprawl meets old-school frontier grit. People flock here for Dallas's glitz and Fort Worth's rugged charm, and to lose themselves in the horizon of those infinite Texas prairies. Everything is oversized, from the massive interchanges and towering skylines to the heavy meals and the yawning sky above. By sunlight, you're navigating concrete canyons walled with shimmering glass. By moonlight, you're either swaying to a honky-tonk rhythm or witnessing a real-deal cattle drive through the old yards. It's a high-octane, unbridled landscape. North Texas just breathes this raw sense of liberty and boundless room. This place feels limitless, where cowboy roots pulse alongside the high-speed energy of a massive city. I've got to ask, where are you joining me from today? And what's the clock say over there? I'm genuinely curious to see how far these stories travel. Post your location below. While those comments roll in, let's dive back into the mystery. Meet 23-year-old Christina Morris, a North Texas native. Her father, Mark, remembers her as a total social butterfly from the moment she could walk. Friendships came naturally to her. She was an open book who never shied away from speaking her mind. Helping others was her default setting. If there was a problem, she was the first to step up. After her parents split during her infancy, she spent most of her time in a bustling household with her dad, stepmother Anna, and her siblings. Yet, her bond with her mother, Johnny, remained unbreakable. Johnny always described her daughter as her absolute world. When Johnny eventually wed Ronnie, Christina joked about the perk of having double the parents, keeping the whole blended family tight-knit. They were a solid unit. With a fresh marketing degree in hand, she landed a gig at a digital matchmaking firm. Just before the nightmare began, she got the green light to move into photography, a dream she'd been chasing. Visual arts and design were her true callings. This promotion wasn't just a paycheck. It felt like her real life was finally starting. For a year, she'd been dating 23-year-old Hunter Foster, though their connection actually stretched back a lifetime. They were middle school acquaintances who later navigated the grueling hurdles of a long-distance romance. Hunter was chasing stardom in the Big Apple, pouring his energy into a budding career in acting and modeling. He eventually returned to the Lone Star State, and they moved into a Fort Worth flat together, though things weren't exactly perfect. Distance is a killer, but jumping straight into sharing a roof brings a whole new set of secret frictions, doesn't it? Hunter was jobless then, mostly focused on the nightlife. While she stayed driven by her career goals, the burden of paying every bill fell squarely on her shoulders. That stress builds a hidden resentment. By Friday, August 29th, 2014, the holiday weekend vibe was everywhere, with everyone itching to celebrate. She needed an escape, especially after another blow-up with Hunter earlier that day. Seated in her car, she dialed Taylor to vent about the mounting drama. The anxiety, the uncertainty, it was heavy. But after some encouragement, she vowed not to let a stupid fight wreck her holiday plans. She just needed to look good, grab some drinks, and finally find a moment to exhale. After snapping a quick car selfie, she made the 45-minute trek from Fort Worth to Plano for a low-key hangout with some high school classmates. The early crowd gathered at Paulina Petrosky's flat. Around 11 p.m., they hit the shops at Legacy, grabbing drinks at Henry's Tavern before moving the party to Scruffy Duff. At 11:35, grainy security footage shows Christina and 4 friends casually strolling through the commercial district. A typical late-night stroll with friends. Everything seemed fine. Once the bars closed, the group plus a few more old classmates headed back to Paulina's. Witnesses noted the room was buzzing with intoxication, though she had stayed relatively sober, nursing only a few drinks. She kept a clear head specifically so she wouldn't be stranded if she felt like heading out early. The lingering sting from her fight with Hunter haunted her, causing her energy to flicker throughout the night. She'd be smiling one second and then lost in her own dark thoughts the next. Clearly, something was eating at her. At 2:12 a.m., she messaged Hunter to pick her up, claiming she'd lost her keys, unaware he was partying miles away in downtown Dallas. The silence from his end sparked her frustration, leading to a flurry of increasingly annoyed follow-up messages. Total radio silence. You can just picture her staring at that screen, baffled by his lack of a reply. She briefly toyed with the idea of crashing on Paulina's couch, which, looking back, might have changed everything. Then, she located her keys and shifted gears. She was determined to drive back and settle the score with Hunter in person. With her phone battery hovering near zero, she realized she needed to start the trek home immediately. One final text went out. "I apologize. Truly. Just answer me. Good night. Hope you're fine, because I'm struggling and my phone is dying." Around 4 a.m., she slipped out of the apartment and walked toward the parking garage as the night finally wound down. The crowd had either vanished or passed out. By sunrise, the first few blurry-eyed partygoers began to stir. Still nursing heavy hangovers, they started reaching out through the group chat, checking to see if everyone had returned home in one piece. People sent casual check-in texts, but Christina went silent. Every call hit her inbox immediately. Initially, no one feared the worst. With a late shift ahead, they figured she was just catching extra sleep. Perhaps her battery quit while she prepped for the day. However, her entire work schedule passed without her ever appearing. A second shift went by in total silence. Growing desperate, her circle contacted her mother, Johnny. Johnny was equally in the dark. Suddenly, an inexplicable, chilling dread settled in that gut instinct, screaming that something was terribly wrong. Johnny reached out to Hunter with no luck. Next, she dialed Mark, Christina's former spouse. He answered, but lacked any info. By 11 p.m. on September 2nd, authorities officially logged a missing person case. I need to file a report for my missing child. She never arrived for her shift. This news just hit me, and everyone is spiraling. Is there a car registered to her? Correct, a 2001 Toyota Celica. Plano was her last known location, though she resides in Fort Worth. Communication ceased at 3:45 a.m. Saturday. Investigators headed to Paulina's place to begin reconstructing her final hours. She pointed out Christina's exact parking spot from that evening. Once police reached the garage, the atmosphere turned grim. The vehicle sat locked on the ground floor. In that moment, the gravity of the situation truly hit home. Near midnight, Mark and Anna arrived and gained entry. Looking inside, they realized Christina's mobile device was missing. Her handbag had vanished, yet the scene lacked signs of violence. No shattered glass, forced entry, or debris littered the area. The absence of a struggle near the vehicle suggested she never actually reached her car. Trouble must have found her earlier. Paulina informed investigators that Christina had exited the residence alongside Enrique Orochi. The pair left as a duo, but her knowledge ended there. Their fate, after leaving the complex, remained a complete mystery. She was clueless. Detectives then pressed her for any details regarding Enrique's background. She had zero intel. Their acquaintance only spanned a few months before that night. Their sole connection was a shared history at the same educational institution. He was a familiar face, but a total stranger otherwise. Regardless, she included him, since the gathering felt like a small reunion. Police contacted Enrique, who offered cooperation despite claiming his recollection of the evening was extremely hazy. He admitted to consuming roughly 10 shots, plus 5 or 6 beers. Between the Adderall and cannabis, his memory was shot. He insisted they barely spoke throughout the entire night. He noted that mixing substances often led to total blackouts, causing significant gaps in his timeline. He confirmed their joint departure, but maintained they parted ways once they reached the perimeter of the complex. In his retelling, she simply wandered off alone toward another area. That was his story. Hello? Hey, Enrique. Detective Kathy Stano calling from the local police station. When is your shift over? I'm heading out shortly. Understood. Listen, could you swing by? We need to discuss Christina's disappearance. Naturally, the level of worry is peaking right now. She is still missing. Yeah, I'm down to help out. You mentioned exiting at the same moment as Christina and heading toward the parking area together. Is that right? Did you? No. Our paths diverged. We stuck together until reaching the property's edge, then parted ways since our vehicles were located in separate lots. Got it. Hopefully, you can wrap things up there fast. This is becoming critical, and we need to locate her. I will clock out soon and come straight to you. Perfect. I really appreciate that. Enrique recalled Christina shouting into her phone, though he missed the context. Detectives, however, were already aware of her day-long feud with Hunter. Thus, the team needed to rule out Hunter. They had to verify he hadn't intercepted her or staged a meeting that ended in a nightmare. Enrique never reached out to her, nor did he alert anyone about her vanishing. Hunter claimed her absence didn't rattle him. He figured she crashed at her parents', or perhaps got picked up for a DUI. He attributed his sudden radio silence to losing his mobile device that same night. He played it off as being occupied with other tasks. Yet, the cellular data painted a far more damning picture. Enrique's phone buzzed Hunter's line at 3:50 in the morning. It looked like Christina might have used Enrique's cell to reach out. 2 texts followed, one at 3:53, another at 3:55. Investigators asked to scan Hunter's device, but he balked, opting to walk out rather than hand it over. To the detectives, that sudden defensiveness felt completely wrong. His partner of a year was missing under dire circumstances, yet he was guarding his phone like a secret. Maybe he assumed she just needed a breather after their fight. Honestly, his logic seemed to hold water. When the police checked with his circle, his location for the entire night was locked in. Days later, digital breadcrumbs from towers and banks proved Hunter never even stepped foot in Plano. The twist? He'd actually been busy selling drugs to an undercover Fed in downtown Dallas that night. His criminal side hustle became his shield, ironically cementing his alibi. The hunt shifted back to the start. They circled back to the party guests, focusing their heat on Enrique Orochi. Witnesses found the connection baffling. Enrique had barely spared Christina a glance all evening. They'd traded a few words at most. His attention was clearly fixed on someone else. Sabrina was the final face on the 11:30 security tape as the group headed for the Strip. Back at the apartment, Enrique grew restless and irritated when Sabrina refused to let him sit beside her. Eventually, Sabrina retreated to the guest room to get some sleep. Minutes later, Enrique barged in, snapped that he was heading home, and stormed out. He gathered his things and exited at the exact same moment as Christina. They left side by side. 10 minutes into her walk, Stephen called to check if she'd reached her car. She actually answered. She claimed they were almost there and promised to text once she was safely inside her ride. That's the smoking gun. She wasn't alone. She was still with Enrique, despite his later denials. 5 minutes later, Stephen's check-in text went through, but the silence that followed was deafening. The message stayed green, no signal. It mirrored the dark window shown on the security feeds perfectly. Video caught the pair passing a bank toward the parking structure, then vanishing into the concrete depths. Tapes never reveal the full truth. But the detective saw enough to draw a chilling conclusion. She seemed to be trailing him willingly, even walking a step behind him without any visible fear. There was no struggle captured, no force used, and nothing suggesting she was in immediate peril. Tragically, the motion sensors near her parking spot failed to trigger, leaving that area in total darkness. The silence broke 3 minutes later, when a camera spotted Enrique's car peeling out of the exit. Christina's vehicle never budged. She never walked out of that garage again. The only exit strategy was inside another car, and Enrique's was the only one moving in that window. The mystery deepened. A woman from Fort Worth had vanished into the shadows of a Plano parking deck. Only one other car left the scene, an Uber driver circling for a lost passenger. Both the driver and the fare were tracked down and identified within hours. Their movements were verified through digital trails and citywide surveillance. After a thorough vetting, police officially cleared them both of any involvement. It was time to bring Enrique back into the interrogation room. They spread a map of the garage before him, demanding he retrace his steps for the record. He gambled on his original lie and doubled down. He claimed he parked elsewhere, and they'd split up long before the garage, so the cops hit play on the video. As the footage rolled, his confidence evaporated into a heavy, panicked silence. He looked blindsided, hesitating as they pointed at the screen. "Is that your car?" they pressed. "No," he muttered, the lie falling flat. "Something is missing here, Enrique. This photo puts you right inside that garage. You're walking with Christina in this frame, and that's your car leaving the scene. Explain that." Then the narrative warped. He suddenly remembered escorting Christina right to her vehicle. He swore their cars were practically side by side before dropping another suspicious detail. A sudden lapse in memory, perhaps he'd relocated his ride earlier and it simply slipped his mind. He played it off as a harmless brain fog. But the detectives were starting to see the design behind his forgetfulness. With every new piece of proof, his story morphed just enough to dodge the heat. He was desperately weaving a tale to match the facts. "We parked, she left, that's it. Look, I'm just telling you what I know. I'm not exactly tracking everyone's movements. Maybe I should have watched her walk off, kept an eye out, but I didn't." Here's the kicker though. No footage captured her entering his ride. The scene was scrubbed of clues, and a motive remained a total enigma. When they pushed to check his trunk, he clutched his keys, claiming a vital corporate meeting required his wheels. That was his final word. Cops spotted the damage: raw scratches, purple contusions, mangled knuckles, and a suspicious dental imprint. He blamed a rough DIY repair session. He claimed a runaway tire crushed his arm, and a fit of rage led him to pummel his own car door. Soon, the accident story crumbled. He finally confessed to being in a violent altercation. He kept the opponent's name a secret. By the time they saw his car, the cabin smelled suspiciously like a fresh, deep clean. The dent was there, but without a judge's signature, they couldn't tear the car apart. Enrique walked free once more. For the record, the department stated he wasn't a suspect in her vanishing yet. They were still gambling on digital breadcrumbs, waiting for tower pings to reveal his path after exiting that dark garage. He held a management role at a cell shop over in Allen. He was due at work by 8 a.m. Saturday, barely 4 hours since he'd last been spotted with the missing girl. His colleague reported a 3-hour delay in his arrival. When he finally clocked in, he looked like a different person, a mess of a man. He came in hobbling and clutching his aching torso. He spent his shift in a daze, acting erratic. His tardiness? A detour to a car wash before the sun was even up. Surveillance footage showed him frozen in place, fixated on his trunk as if he were seeing a ghost. He popped the hatch and obsessively scrubbed the interior. 5 days had now bled away since Christina vanished into thin air. Choppers and drones buzzed over Plano, while boots on the ground scoured the brush. Still, the trail remained stone cold. Even with her family flooding the streets with flyers and pleading for help, the silence from the public was deafening. The bounty for answers jumped to $25,000. Everything hinged on the signals, the invisible web of tower pings linking his device to hers. From the moment they hit that parking deck, their phones were locked in a digital dance, pinging the same towers in unison. By 4:56 a.m., long after the cameras lost them, their phones were still whispering to the exact same towers. Suddenly, her signal flatlined. His phone stayed alive for another 30 minutes, tracing a path straight back to his doorstep. A drive that should have been quick stretched into a 90-minute odyssey. Defiant, he clung to his story and even stepped in front of the cameras to plead his case to the world. Freshly unsealed papers are shedding light on the individual grilled by Plano PD over the missing girl. He went on the air to address the lies investigators claim have sabotaged the search for Christina. I need everyone to know I'm a clean man. I never touched her. I didn't lie. My brain just short-circuited about where I left my ride. I'm just scatterbrained and terrible with directions. I totally blanked on letting her use my phone for her boyfriend. The cops had to remind me. When they asked to dig through my device, I just handed it over. I let them see everything. Detectives couldn't ignore the mangled fender on his Camaro, nor the fresh welts and raw skin decorating his arm and hand. A rim slipped and crushed my arm. I saw red and just needed to hit something. I took it out on the metal. 2 hard swings right into the car. Authorities aren't buying it. The metal doesn't match his story, and his co-workers saw a man who looked like he'd been through hell. He's just some worker. I kept him clueless. No clue why he's spinning tales about a fight I never had. People paint me as a monster, but I'm actually the kindest soul you'll ever cross paths with. I'm clean in her disappearance. Hunter, already cleared, gave the parents and press a brief word. He confessed to a total mental collapse, unstable, drowning in a sea of suffocating guilt. He was haunted by the what-ifs, thinking a simple meeting that night could have changed everything. If he'd only shown up, the whole tragic script might have been rewritten. That obsession took root. All I want is her walking through the door, safe and alive. Loved ones hit the streets, organizing protests to force a confession out of Enrique. Her father, Mark, pleaded for Enrique to talk, certain he was holding on to the missing pieces. Nothing makes sense. Enrique brushed off the hiding claims as mere self-preservation. My family and I pray daily. I'm on my knees in church, begging for her discovery so this nightmare ends. By early November, the Plano authorities officially slapped the suspect label on Enrique. They made one thing clear. They weren't yet accusing him of physical harm. The initial charge was simple. He was messing with their investigation. That was the line. Then came the search warrant. His car was about to face a brutal, top-to-bottom forensic sweep. This time, the genetic evidence was going to scream the truth. They found her DNA all over his trunk, way too much to be some accidental brushing against it scenario. The sheer concentration of the samples was undeniable. Experts were certain that biological trace was either her blood or her saliva. The odds were 1 in a billion. 24-year-old Enrique Orochi was hit with a $1 million bond. A family rep says he spiraled into deep depression since his arrest at 8 o'clock Saturday at his parents' Allen home. They deny a suicide attempt, but he's currently under constant watch behind bars. Authorities confirmed the genetic trail inside the Camaro belonged to Morris. When the news hit, I just sat and prayed with everything I had that this was the breakthrough. Miguel still clings to the hope she's alive, perhaps snatched by some trafficking ring. Cops say the DNA was just one piece. Other secrets helped them secure that warrant. We must play the long game for her sake, waiting for justice to finally be served. Prosecutors built 2 chilling scenarios of what went down that mysterious night. Both theories suggest Enrique made a forced move on her. He was likely stung by Sabrina's rejection just minutes before, fueling a desperate, violent humiliation. Scenario 1. He pounced at the parking garage, and she shut him down cold. Drunk and enraged, he struck her down, stuffed her in the trunk, and vanished. That massive dent on his car? Cops suspect it was the echo of her fighting for her life. His shredded knuckles didn't come from a car door, they came from her. The 3 minutes gap in the garage footage points to a second, perhaps more logical, theory. In this version, he played the gentleman and offered her a lift back home. She hopped in willingly, never suspecting the drive was about to turn deadly. Panic probably set in the second she realized they were heading the wrong way. Between the wrong turn and his advances, things turned ugly fast, ending in a violent clash. Judging by his own wounds, the battle inside that car was absolute carnage. They suspect she was already fading or gone by the time he slammed the trunk shut. Her dad recalled her paralyzing fear of the dark and suffocating, tight spaces. Picturing her alone in that pitch-black trunk, fighting for breath, is an unbearable thought. Chillingly, she likely stayed by his side that night, just to avoid the darkness she feared most. Earlier, Enrique tried to shift the spotlight by telling police to investigate Hunter instead. He even cast suspicion on Hunter for Christina's disappearance, despite the fact that Hunter had already been exonerated. Hunter finally agreed to take the stand, recounting his exact movements on the night she vanished. Previously, he had stayed silent, hiding behind the Fifth Amendment and avoiding any public comment. The narrative flipped when Hunter was jailed a week before Enrique, having admitted to an ecstasy distribution plot. An undercover sting on the night Christina went missing had sparked a massive federal narcotics probe. Under a grant of immunity, Hunter promised the full truth, provided his testimony wouldn't trigger federal drug charges against him. He confessed to making some dark choices. Admitting his substance abuse, he conceded that his post-disappearance conduct looked incredibly suspicious. Instead of searching for her, he was getting high with friends, a series of terrible calls. He laid bare their rocky relationship and his deep remorse, yet held firm on one point. He had zero involvement in her fate, claiming the whole ordeal left him shattered. Prosecutors, meanwhile, stacked their evidence: security footage, genetic markers, and cellular tracking. A detective detailed finding a horrific cache on Enrique's phone images and clips of women being brutalized. Enrique's lawyers countered, insisting that every scrap of proof was open to interpretation. They suggested the lab work was flawed, claiming cross-contamination between Enrique's and Christina's vehicles. No video caught her entering his car, and they argued cell data is notoriously unreliable. By September 2016, after 48 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict that read as follows: "We find the defendant guilty of first-degree aggravated kidnapping, signed by Foreman Bill Rice. Enrique stood convicted of a top-tier felony, aggravated kidnapping." The verdict was a milestone. Yet, even then, a haunting mystery remained, buried in the silence. Where was Christina? The sentence: life. Judge Mark Rush delivered that final blow to Enrique Orochi today. It took only minutes for the judge to impose the maximum penalty: life behind bars. 5 members of the Morris family confronted 26-year-old Enrique face-to-face during impact statements. Orochi seemed unfazed, glancing away and smirking while the grieving family spoke their truth. The family noticed his coldness, promising that while he rots, they will never stop searching. He needs to find his conscience and speak up. Do the right thing for once. Tell us where she is, because we know you know. He's cold-blooded. Nothing touches him, not his crimes, not even a life sentence. I hope the reality hits him in prison. I hope he rots in there. Not a single member of Orochi's family showed up for the sentencing hearing. This life term means 30 years must pass before he can even request parole. Enrique later sought a retrial through an appeal, but the court shut him down. In a prison interview, he claimed to pray for the Morris family and Christina's safety constantly. Still, he clammed up about what happened once they reached that parking garage. He blamed the DNA in his trunk on contamination, or perhaps a deliberate frame job. Insisting the case was purely circumstantial, he claimed he was targeted because they lacked other leads. Even now, he maintains that the authorities should have investigated Hunter more thoroughly. I've left it to God. He knows my release date. I still believe in justice. I won't serve time for a crime I didn't commit without a lifelong fight. We'll fight too, the family countered. They had a conviction, but not the closure they craved. Where is she? They looked for her every single day. Her father trekked through the Texas heat and brush alone, searching every inch for any sign of her. Her mother's commitment reached a haunting new level. She traded her career for a life on the move, relocating across the state just to hunt for clues. Tracking her girl became her sole existence. While authorities saw a corpse, her family saw a survivor. They swore she was out there, held captive in the shadows. Johnny, her mother, dialed her number incessantly, constant daily voicemail messages. She penned endless letters and flooded digital walls with messages, sharing every heartbeat, as if her daughter might suddenly surface online to read the trail she left behind for her. Hey baby, it's Mom. The void you left behind is just way too quiet. Give me any sign you can. We're coming to get you. You're so loved. Kisses. Talk soon. 4 years vanished into silence. 2 years since Enrique was put behind iron bars. In March 2018, detectives circled back to a familiar spot. Near an Anna construction site, something in the rural air shifted. New housing developments were finally expanding into that empty space. While excavating the earth, a laborer unearthed a human skull. Soon, more pieces of the mystery emerged from the dirt. Tattered scraps of fabric lay near the bones. Lab results quickly turned a nightmare into cold fact. Those remains in clothing were verified as the final traces of 23-year-old Christina Morris. The haunting uncertainty of her whereabouts finally reached a somber conclusion. The 3.5-year hunt for the abducted 23-year-old ends right here in an Anna field east of 75. Insiders told the local news that the discovery from yesterday definitely belongs to young Christina Morris. After 4 years, the exact how of her passing stayed a secret. Despite finding her, Enrique faced no new counts. Legal minds pointed out that to nail him for the ultimate crime, the state had to link a specific secondary abduction count directly to the act of taking her life. Launching a fresh capital trial seemed a long shot since Enrique already stood convicted for the abduction. The law forbids double-dipping on the same crime. He's already booked for life anyway. Truthfully, a new conviction wouldn't add a single day to the time he's already slated to spend in a cell. Then the world hit a standstill with the global health crisis. Legal progress stalled out completely. It's the best and worst day of my life, if I'm being real. I'll honor her spirit today. I'm just trying to keep my head above water, and I think I'll make it. You've got this, truly. The outpouring of love for her has been incredible. I'm certain she feels it wherever she is. I hope everyone feels the energy here. It hit me the second I stepped into the sanctuary. As of now, Enrique's lips are still sealed. The truth of that final morning is still buried in shadows. Her mom believes Christina is looking down with pride, knowing they never threw in the towel or stopped digging. At the very least, they finally brought her back. There's solace in knowing she's resting. Anna, her stepmom, noted they now have a quiet spot to visit and chat with her. Obviously, this wasn't the happily ever after we prayed for. Yet there's a strange comfort in having her back under our wing. Sarah, her sister, added that closure is a myth. They didn't want an ending. They just wanted their Christina.